Hey guys, my name is Zach. Welcome to the Joy of Hobbying. This week we're going to work on a Kaiyodo Vader helmet. This is a helmet from the early 90s, and in my opinion it still holds up as probably the best 1/6 scale Vader helmet that we have available to us. Now this is an older helmet, so you want to make sure that you rinse the sculpt with some soap and water to get rid of any gunk that may or may not be on the cast. It is also a vinyl helmet, so you want to be careful with warm water. It can warp the sculpt, and but you will need some of that to actually remove the flashing on the bottom. So we're starting off here with some Vallejo Mecha Air Black Primer. Now this is obviously a black vinyl cast, so it might seem odd that we're priming it in black, but it'll help us later as it's basically going to be our first coat. So you can see it yields a nice matte black finish. We're then going to go in with some Vallejo dark gunmetal and start framing in some of the details where they need to be gunmetal. This is going to take me about 2 to 3 coats in some areas, always making sure to thin your paint with water and to not go too thick to obscure any details. You can see here with most of the gunmetal framed in, I did get a little messy in some parts, so we're going to touch up the black here next. But you can really see this Harlequin pattern that Darth Vader is famous for. And in this clip, you can see we've touched up the black, really sharpened some of those finer edges on the cheeks. And it's really at this point taking shape. We're going to hit it with some gloss coat here, with this just a generic aerosol gloss coat. And this will hide some of the crimes from some of the paint application of the gunmetal. It'll kind of flatten it out, and it leaves us with a really good coat of paint. So we're going to start with some Vallejo IAF Sand, some Kislev Flesh by Citadel, some Reikland Flesh Shade from Citadel, and just a tiny bit of Saddle Brown from Vallejo with some retarder medium. And we're going to run that through the airbrush, and we're going to start working on the flesh here. Now this is going to be the first coat of paint, and it's going to be several different colors to get to the sort of gangly appearance that Darth Vader has in the original trilogy. You can see here it's sort of a kind of a reminiscent of like a scarred flesh texture paint that we're going for here right now. And you can see the helmet's really coming along. So we're going to use some Vallejo Liquid Gold to touch up the gold squares on the top of the helmet. You want to make sure to thin this paint with alcohol, as water will not work to thin this paint. It'll actually rust, quote unquote, and it becomes very unsightly. Now I've gone through and cleaned up the little gold squares with some Vallejo Chrome, and you can see I've edged out the squares and also painted in some of the other greebling and bright silver. So here we have the helmet at its current state. I've considered at this point adding a black wash to the squares, but I ended up going against that. But the flesh is going to really start taking shape here. We're going to use some Braineater Beige by Army Painter and thin this down quite a bit. I'll be honest, this first coat here is quite a bit thinner than I think I wanted to thin it. I always have trouble with the Army Painter line of paints, and this is after 4 coats here. You can see that flesh is really starting to get that sort of gangly look that is famous for in Empire Strikes Back. So I've touched up some of the black around the back of the sculpt, and here I'm going in with some Reikland Flesh Shade over the veins to kind of darken them and add a little bit of contrast to them. And I made these intentionally dark because the next step here we're going to actually be going in with some Vallejo White and put a very thin coat over this flesh, and this will pretty much be our final flesh application. Now I should have masked here. You can see I got a little bit of overspray, but it's really not hard to touch up, and you can see here we have a really nice sort of a deep flesh tone that has a lot of different tones in it, and I think it's quite nice actually. We're going to go in here with Vellejo Steel. I removed the tusks from the stock model. I just really hate those tusks, and I replaced them with some 38mm bolts that I use on all my Kaiyodo Vader helmets, and have those painted in. Now at this point the flesh is kind of satin, and so I hit it with a matte coat, and this is kind of what it gives us, a matte toned flesh. And you can see the helmet here is looking really good. It's pretty much done at this point. At this point we're just waiting for the dome, which I'll be using the Hasbro titanium dome, which is in the mail right now, and then we'll show a video of how to fit it to the figure. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you guys learned something.